Welcome to The Pulse, a podcast for members and friends of the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors, to see what is going on around the Institute and gain some insights into the people, processes, meetings and activities that the CIEHF delivers. And welcome to the first edition of Pulse from the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors. My name is Barry Kirby and I'm the current president of the Institute, and I'm joined today by b.peachey, the CEO. Hi Ben, how are you doing?
I'm very good, Barry. Really excited to join you on this first episode.
Excited may be a bit of a strong expression. We'll see how this goes and then see what everybody else thinks of it. The focus for this podcast is to highlight what events have taken place, what is coming up, and also give members of the CIEHF an insight into what's going on behind the scenes, i.e. what's been done on your behalf. One of the big feedback I got through conference, which we'll talk about, was a lot of members don't know what goes on behind the scenes. How do these things come together? And in one of the speeches I gave, I talked about the team that goes into things, the staff team and the voluntary team that make the magic happen behind a lot of the things that a lot of members, quite rightly, we kind of take for granted because we don't know the amount of effort. So this podcast is aimed for members, hopefully a bit by members as well, because we want to get people in from different parts of the Institute to talk about that. This is not to replicate any of the other communications that we have, because we already get things like the Ergonomist, the quarterly magazine, the monthly newsletter, Think, as well as the weekly email from Tina Worthy that gives us brief insights into what's gone on that week. This is meant to complement that and really focus on giving that background view about what's happening. The format is going to be quite fluid, and it's a bit of a trial to see if people find it useful. If there is more or there's different information you'd like to see in this format, then get in touch. This is for you, for the members. So shout up to make it what it is that you want it to be. We're currently looking at doing this every 2 weeks, and it's a brief reflection on any events in the past 2 weeks, as well as a bit of a look forward to 2 weeks and beyond about the sort of things that you can look forward to seeing. So if we start off with reflections on what's gone on, I guess the past 2 weeks, maybe slightly longer. The big event that's happened is our annual conference. But before we get to that, there was also the minor affair of the Institute AGM, which I guess legally is possibly one of the most important things we do on an annual basis. It's where the election results are announced and the new committees come into play. It's where we found out, for example, that Mark Young is the new president-elect, taking my recently vacated seat. Bob Bridger is returning to the council as treasurer, and we've got new and returning trustees to council and new members to the professional affairs board. The virtual setup of this event is actually proving way more popular than the in-person version, which is now why we're holding it separate to annual conference, and it's getting a lot more attendance, a lot more interaction through the chat. So that's great, and great to see so many people engaging with that. But as I mentioned last week was conference, and I sort of look back, and I've been attending conference now since about 2015, 2016. But Ben, this was your first time. What did you think? What were your thoughts on conference?
Yeah, I loved it, I think is the first thing to say. It's been a sort of milestone in my calendar since I joined the Institute last September, because it was the first real time to sort of see, I guess, the biggest group of members sort of face to face. And it was everything I hoped it to be. I mean, as you say, the team put a massive effort in to make it a great conference. In many ways, the aim of the team is that you don't know what goes on behind the scenes. It's the idea is you come, you enjoy the conference, and it all seems to happen by magic. And in many ways, I think it did. So I think the first thing to say, I was immensely proud of the team. And as sort of the chief executive, I sort of very much felt like the swan gliding along the surface. You know, my job there was really to sort of to talk to people. I led a couple of the sessions, but really it was the rest of the team. You know, Tina, Iris, Sam, Rachel, Paige, who did all the work, and obviously the fantastic secretariat, as they're called, which is mainly made up of sort of volunteer students who sort of help make the event run really smoothly. So I think that's the first thing to say about it. Was just, yeah, I just felt immensely proud that it was such a smooth, well-run event, and it was clear that people were enjoying it.
It was. I was really proud to stand up. It's the first time I've ever stood at the start of a conference to welcome everybody in. But even then, that wasn't the the main first event. The first event actually happened the day before, when we had the careers fair, the masterclasses in the doctoral consortium, and the biggest impression I got was just there was just such a buzz around it. There were so many people who were really, really happy to be there, more so than I've ever seen before. And I don't know whether that's a reflection on the fact that we've just had, we've had so much restrictions from COVID, and even last year's conference, even though there was that in-person element, didn't feel quite as buoyant as what this. Did you sort of get that feeling that the restrictions were off?
Yeah, so yes and no. So I got the feeling of the energy. So, and it's fascinating, isn't it, when you go to an event? It's sort of hard to put your finger on, but you feel an energy and a vitality, and I felt that across the 3 days without a doubt. What I didn't have was the comparison to other events, because I've never been to one of the institute conferences before. But I was told our biggest ever event, which was really, I was really excited for that. But obviously, as far as I was concerned, this was the normal amount of people, because it was the first time I was there. So yeah, I guess I don't have that comparison, but the energy, absolutely. There was a real buzz around the place. I've worked in member bodies, done events before, and I've been in events that have had lots of energy, but there's always, or quite often, that there'll be problems that you need to deal with, and there didn't seem to be at this event. I'm sure that there's always sort of a few minor things, but there was nothing major. People were able to talk with each other. People were able to get to the sessions. Anyone I spoke to about the sessions they were in, it was universally good feedback, and so again, that was just really exciting.
I noticed you weren't very enthusiastic about the joining in the karaoke, though. You very much slumped back in your seat and said, "Not on your Nelly."
Yes, that is very true. So I would say, so Tina, who many people know, so Tina Worthy, my deputy, who's been with the Institute a long time, runs the conference, and she checks in with me on sort of various things, usually when there's a big bill to pay or something. But yeah, about 3 days before the conference, I got a message going, "Is it okay if we do karaoke?" And I made it very clear in text message. I said, "That's fine, as long as I don't have to do it." I was saying to someone, so my previous organisation, so I worked at a body called the Entrepreneurs Organisation, that was a global organisation, but based out of North America. So the culture was very different. But we had a staff event, and I was, as they called it in that body, a voluntold to do something, and I was voluntold to do a lip sync battle with one of the staff members, which I found awful. I really struggled to do, because I'm not a sort of an extrovert like that. But it had the benefit of I didn't have to sing, because I can't sing at all. And then I had the embarrassment of this will show my age, but I lip synced to Wham rap to an audience of people who were mostly 15 to 20 years younger than me, and I think only one other person in the room had ever heard of Wham.
Fair enough. I mean, I sort of highlight the fact that you didn't want to do the karaoke. I'm going to say that I did say, as soon as Tina said this as well, I had a quiet word and said there is no way in living memory am I getting on that stage either. And she did make me panic by saying that I'd been nominated a few times and had to stand up, but thankfully I could stand down again. Nobody had to suffer either. So I think overall conference, massive success. I'm really, really pleased, and all the feedback. In fact, we still keep getting emails through and comments and people sharing stuff on social media. So that's fantastic. One of the other events we had just a couple of days ago, where we met at Cardiff. Do you want to talk a bit about what we've been doing with Cardiff University?
Sure. So this is an idea that came from so your predecessor in the role, Alex Stedman, who's now our sort of past president, so still very involved as a trustee. So he is a sort of a visiting lecturer down in Cardiff, and so he's been speaking with Phil Morgan, who leads the sort of the human factors team down there, and they wanted to do sort of a careers event, basically. And as you know, those of you who were at conference last week will know, and also actually there's been some really good conversations online as well. A key concern at the moment is the amount of people in the profession and the need to bring more people into the profession. And so one thing I'm really keen on is building closer relationships with the universities, and really specifically focusing on students at the undergraduate level who may be getting some exposure to human factors or not, and encouraging them to think about human factors as a career, but also importantly to think about human factors as a master's course. As many of you, as a lot of you know, there used to be an undergraduate course in human factors, but there isn't anymore. So that was the idea behind it. Very much a pilot, and it's something because I think I want to do this at other universities as well. And so go off on a slight tangent. I had a conversation with Laura Sutton, who works in the rail sector. So Laura is one of our fellows, and is just actually joined the council as a trustee. So I'm really excited having her on board. But she echoed the same thing. We had a conversation about the rail sector, but I remember something that was really pertinent from our conversation, because she has a daughter who, I think she's, if I remember rightly, her daughter's studying up in Manchester, doing a psychology undergraduate degree. And in the conversation, she said, well, there's probably 400 students studying psychology in Manchester. And I said, well, how many of those do we need to come into human factors? And she said, well, probably no more than 5 or 10. And so the thing that said to me was going, well, actually, maybe we don't need to put a lot of effort into trying to re-establish an undergraduate course. There's a lot of undergraduates studying relevant degrees already, be it in psychology, engineering, design. So the Cardiff idea was around, well, let's try and get out and speak to some of these students and tell them what a great career they could have in human factors. So it went really well. It was a small audience, but I think that was partly to do with the timing of the year. So I wasn't too worried about that. But we had 5 psychology students that we spoke to after the event, and were showing real interest in the sector. We also had a really good sort of format for the session as well. So yeah, I was really pleased about it. We're going to do another one with them probably next January, which is around the start of their human factors module for their year 3 students. So we think that will be better timing. And then the other thing we'll be doing is starting to sort of approach some other universities to see if we can do it in other places too.
No, I thought it was a really good event. I mean, as you say, yes, maybe the attendance wasn't huge, but actually the people who were there were really keen, really engaged. And whilst the formal Q&A bit, we did that, but then we hung around afterwards talking to some of the students for ages as well. And I was just really pleased to basically share that panel session with really knowledgeable people. So showing that breadth of experience. I think it's just that piece, isn't it? It's around that. Why would anybody want to study human factors? Well, actually, it's the yes, this is what you can do at the end of it. This is the variety, or you can go and do all these different things, which I think that's the message that keeps on hitting home.
Absolutely, and yeah, I must give a big shout out to Laura Bishop, who was on the panel as well. So the other thing I did is I went and joined. I went a bit earlier in the day, so the panel session was at lunchtime, but I sat in on the lecture they had in the morning. And Laura is actually a really good example of someone who has sort of, I guess, rapidly progressed in her career. She's gone from being a psychology undergraduate into doing a master's, then doing a PhD. With Phil at Cardiff, but working with Airbus during that time, and it, she's doing some really interesting work around cyber security, and it sort of felt like that she's had the opportunity, through her PhD working with Airbus, to get some just incredible career opportunities, to be honest, and by the way, driven by her great talent as well and her enthusiasm. She's one of the many people I've been blown away by, actually, because I visited sort of Loughborough earlier this year as well, and speaking to people who are holding down a job, doing a PhD, and in Laura's case with 3 children as well. And and I echoed a conversation I had with a NHS nurse who was doing the masters at Loughborough, who has 2 children, and she lived up in Manchester, and I've got 2 young children. I have no idea how they're sort of managing to do all of that, but she's, Laura's, she's knocking it out the park. She just handed her thesis in, and she's now got this sort of really impressive role with Airbus, and I think she's going to have a really big impact there.
No, I completely agree. It was an absolute privilege to sort of share the stage with her. So hopefully, as you said, that's going to be a test case to see how we can roll that out through other universities as well, do lots more engagement. And so really from that perspective, the Institute is taking a really proactive role into filling this void that we see coming, or in fact is already here. So that's a really positive step for the Institute.
I agree, and I guess this is, anyone who's watching this, if you have links with your university where you studied, or of undergraduate courses where you have connections, please let me know, because basically we want, the hardest thing is finding the right people to speak to be honest. So if you have those contacts and you want to go and do an event with us at your old university, or with a university that you know and work with, please let me know, because the more we can do this, the better.
Cool. So the other bit about what we're going to do on this this podcast is look about what's coming up. So in the next couple of weeks, the London and South East Regional Group and the North West and North Wales Regional Group are meeting up on the 10th of May, and the Healthcare Group are meeting up on the 16th of May. Ben, what will these 2 groups be going into? These 3 groups, sorry, be going into?
Yeah, so I'll start with the Northwest and North Wales group, because that's the easy one. They're doing a sort of almost like a sort of a conference wash-up kind of thing, which I think is a really good idea. So I think it'll be a chance for people who are at the conference to sort of share what they got out of it, and also to share with those who weren't at the conference to learn a bit more about that. And I know we've already spoken about the conference, but I think as well as sort of the networking that you get by attending conference, the other important thing are those sort of takeaways that people take away from the sessions that they've been to. So I think that will be a really good event, and for all of these meetup groups, if you haven't been to one before, I've been to a few since I've come on, and they're really great. It's a really good way to sort of meet and talk to other people in the profession, and just pick up some sort of good ideas or lessons learned. So that's what the Northwest and North Wales group are doing. The London and South East Network Group have got a different session. So they've got a couple of really, I think, interesting speakers. So Suzanne Davis, who's the Human Factors Manager at EasyJet, she's going to be giving a talk about the challenges of integrating just culture, principles and processes company-wide. So I think that's going to be, really interesting. I'm sure many of us have been sort of customers of EasyJet, so we know it's sort of a bright sort of company, but it's all about sort of no frills, delivering good service. So to hear about how they build their company culture, I think it's going to be really fascinating. So I'm certainly planning to go along that. And then alongside Suzanne, we've got Trevor Dale, and Trevor is a former airline pilot, and he's a human factors trainer, and he's going to be giving a talk on making memories sticky. So writing to the long-term memory. So I think sort of a very different sort of talk, but obviously sort of will go well with a talk around culture. So I think that's going to be a really good session. So those are the 2 sort of regional groups that are going on. And then the following week on Tuesday the 16th, we've got the healthcare sector group, and they're going to have a couple of speakers as well. So we've got Helene Barnes, and she's from the Leeds Teaching Hospitals NHS Trust, and she's going to be talking about developing a human factors toolkit for theatres. And speaking alongside her will be Jo Simmons, who's one of our chartered members and who's also a registered nurse. And Jo's going to present on human factors ergonomics for a new hospital programme. So I think those 2 will be really fascinating talks as well. And I will say with the sector groups, whilst it is a great way for people who work in the healthcare sector to again sort of listen to expert speakers, but also talk with each other and build relationships. I do encourage others outside of the healthcare sector to go along as well. As a member of the Institute, you can join any of the sector groups regardless of what sector you're in. And as I've been learning in my first few months, and actually you and I were speaking about yesterday, one of the great things about human factors is that you can work in different sectors quite easily, and you can take the lessons learned as well. So I would encourage those of you from outside healthcare to consider going along to that.
And it's well worth it. I mean, I've been to having not worked in the medical domain, I've been to the healthcare sector group a couple of times, and it's really good for CPD as well. Your continuing professional development, you can put that in as a thing that you've done.
Absolutely.
Slightly out of sync, but on the 15th of May, Mark Young is leading a team to look at, for next year, celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Institute, which is a massive milestone, really. And what Mark is really keen on is got a good event that's really coming together, a physical event, but it's actually driving out supporting the educational strategy that we're wanting to do as well. But he's also reaching out for volunteers for either to come and help get involved, run the event and make it worthwhile, or if you want to support it either yourself or your company, either financial sponsorship, or if you've got demonstrations of human factors in action, maybe you've got a simulator, a model, or a toolkit or something like that you think would maybe a benefit to this celebration, then get in touch with Mark, because Mark is wanting all of this sort of stuff to push forward this event, and we'll make sure that his contact details are also within the notes of this, or you can get in touch with Ben and myself, and we'll point you in the right direction. Ben, that's all I've got in my list of things that are going on. Have I missed anything? What else is coming up in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so I guess I want to come back to the conference. A lot of what I'm focused on is building on all the great conversations we had at conference. And funnily enough, I got so Tracy Hurley, who led the final healthcare stream session. They actually had a really good sort of wrap-up discussion at the end of the conference, and she just today, actually, to both you and me, so you got it as well, sent some really good notes from that discussion, and what people want from the healthcare sector group, and how we engage with the healthcare sector moving forward. So I'm doing lots of following up on those kind of sort of conversations or sort of notes that we got from that. So that's a big part of what I'm doing. I'm also preparing for our next council meeting, which will coming up at the beginning of June. That will, and part of that is doing some sort of trustee onboarding training around sort of the roles of trustees, who are, I guess their biggest role is holding me to account and making sure me and the staff team are delivering on what we meant to do. So that's good. Third thing that I wanted to, which I mentioned at the conference as well, is that we're looking to do a member survey, and I have to admit I'm sort of a little bit behind where I wanted to be with that, because I'm very keen to get that survey out in the next 6 weeks or so. But I guess part of talking about it is to sort of hold my feet to the fire and make sure we get it out there. But we're building a new strategy for the organisation, and it needs to be based on evidence. And I said this in my last Economist article. We haven't done a member survey for 3 years, so it's really important that we understand what our members are getting out of the Institute, but also importantly, what are the challenges for the profession and what are the opportunities for the profession. And I really want to sort of delve into that. The other thing I've been having some good conversations around is almost like the sort of perceptions of human factors in sort of leadership, and off the back of the article that David Thompson wrote about the future of the profession that we talked about at conference. David actually has posted that on LinkedIn this week again, so if you haven't read that article, really encourage you to read it. But I also wanted to give a shout out as well to Kate Ewing, who's another member who wrote her own piece off the back of that, and she was really sort of talking about that whole sort of culture piece for the profession, and how do others within a business I guess sort of treat and understand human factors, and so I don't have the answer yet, but I think one thing we should be doing as an institute is almost trying to take that pulse of what are the perceptions of human factors amongst the stakeholder network that you will work with. So I almost feel, I wanted to sort of flag that. So my first job is let's get the views of our members and those inside the profession. But following on from that, I really want to think, how do we best get the perceptions of those who work with our members, and then do that in such a way that we can then track trends over time. So yeah, those are the most important things. And the final thing to mention is a big part of my job is working with and engaging with other organizations. So I'm next Friday, I'm due to go to a meeting of a sort of a new initiative called the Occupational Safety and Health Stakeholder Alliance. I say I'm due to go. I was planning my travel yesterday and realised there's a train strike on next Friday. So the meeting's up in Leicester. So this weekend I need to do some negotiation with my partner Jennifer to see if I can have access to our car so I can go to that meeting next week. But if I can't go in person, I'll look to sort of join it virtually. But really interesting. So we've been invited to join that stakeholder alliance. So I think that's something we want to do, but as part of my job is really that's sort of a trustee decision. So I'm going to go along to the meeting, find out how we can contribute, how we can benefit from it, and then make that case to the trustees next month. But it's a really good opportunity to work with some of the other member bodies there. So all of you who work in the occupational health and safety field won't be surprised. It's people like the British Safety Council, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, the Health and Safety Executive, IOSH, the Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. So a really sort of good group. And the whole idea behind this alliance is for us to sort of work collaboratively in terms of the communications and public affairs space, to have a single voice when it comes to trying to improve approaches to that space. So I think it's something really important for us to be involved in. A good example of the kind of things they're doing, and this was largely led by the British Occupational Hygiene Society with those groups, is that there was a joint letter done that we did sign. So again, something that was around encouraging government to keep, or sorry, I'd say not to lose in the sort of the retained EU law bill that's been going through Parliament. It was sort of very encouraging. Don't get rid of all of the fantastic workplace health and safety legislation that's come in over the last 20 years or so. So that's sort of a good example of the types of things that we'll get out of that alliance. So I'm looking forward to that meeting, and obviously I can report on how it goes in the next episode.
That sounds fantastic, and the more alliances we can make, the better. Because I mean, that's what we do as human factors people. We profess to be the glue that holds these things together. So that sounds absolutely right up our street. You did mention council. So looking further ahead, 1st of June, there is our first meeting of council, where trustees will be coming along to discuss the state of the CIEHF, reporting back on the different things that we've been doing, and as you said, Ben, listening to what you and the rest of the team have been doing on our behalf. That's going to be quite exciting because it's the first one I chair as president. I'm lucky enough. I have chaired a couple in last year, but this is the first time I properly get in the driving seat in my own right, and I'm excited and nervous, both at the same time. But then the following day, a bit like what we did at the back end of last year, we've got the first proper meeting of the executive committee as well. So that's going to be quite good fun. And again, that's the first one I formally chair as president. So that's going to be good. For those of you that don't know, the council itself is made up of 16, 17 members, maybe more. Should really count them up. Representing all different areas of the institute, but the executive committee is made up of 4. Which is the past president, in this case, Alex Steadman, myself as president, and then the president-elect, Mark Young, and the treasurer, Bob Bridger, who's come back on during the last AGM to take on that role. And then also we have Ben and Tina join us. And basically between the 6 of us, we look at really the nitty-gritty of stuff, what's come out of council, what are the next challenges that we need to address on council's behalf, and set our agenda for the next quarter. So as Ben's alluded to, when we have them meetings, then we'll share insights into what's happened at those meetings, because all the minutes and stuff will be available anyway. But we'll give some of the flavour about why various things were said, and we'll talk about that in future editions. So, having thought that this would be a sort of just a quick 5-minute flash through what's going on in the institute, I'm really grateful for everybody to be spending their time to watch or listen to this first edition of the Pulse. Please do let us know what your thoughts in the comments, or through whatever format you feel most appropriate. Tell us more about what you'd like to see. Is this type of information useful to you? Have you learned a bit more about what we're doing? What would you like to hear from, or who would you like to hear from? Is the members in the institute that you, or even staff within the institute that you've talked to or heard of, would like to know a bit more about what it is that they're doing on our behalf? What more institutes would you like on the activities that we get up to? If you've also got any questions about the institute, about how the different mechanisms work, because we do want to try and show a bit of spotlight on that, particular roles, and maybe you want to know a bit more about what the past president is going to getting up to this year, and the sort of responsibilities they have in that role. We can try and drag Alex on and tell us ask him to give us his sort of insights on what he's doing, for example, or even, I guess, even aspects on institute history. We've been chartered only for a relatively short period in the overall time, and actually I think I would learn quite a lot as well, because I've only been a member for the past 10 or so years, and I think there's different people who've done different roles, so you don't necessarily realize their history with the institute, and I think it would be fascinating to learn some of that. So for now, thank you very much for your time. Ben, if people want to get in contact with you, how would they go about doing so?
A couple of ways. They can email me, which is b.peachey@ergonomics.org.uk. My surname is as peach as in the fruit and an EY at the end. Or maybe the easier way is via LinkedIn. So I'm active on there. Find me, connect with me, send me a message. But yeah, would love to hear from anyone. I think if I can speak to every member of the institute, that will be a good thing. So I'm trying to speak to as many people as possible. So please do reach out to me.
Perfect. And if you want to get in touch with me, then you can get in touch with me on social media. I'm fairly easy to find there. Again, on LinkedIn, I can do that, or president@ergonomics.org.uk. And so thank you all, and we shall see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, everyone.